Now, I'm going to start with this photograph right here. It's a pretty terrible photograph. Now I can see a horizon line going across here, right at the base of it. This is kind of a foothill thing. It's a terrible photograph. You might not be able to see it in the video, but that comes across right about there. Now see, what I have now, I've got a major and a minor chord. The canvas is much more interesting than if I put that horizon line in the center. Here, a third here, a third here. I don't want to end up with three equal thirds. So you can see that this shape is smaller than this shape or this shape. I want to kind of, in the back of my mind, be aware that every shape has to have its own weight. Now, I'm painting in the sawtooths, looking at this photograph, so I'm coming across. Now I'm going to do a little bit of editing. See, this peak right here, this tallest peak, is right in the center of the composition as well, which I don't want. So I'm going to go up that, bring that tallest peak over here a little bit to the left. Then I've got this other mountain out in front of it that comes up, not quite as tall. Now see, again, I've got this shape, this shape. This shape is probably close to this one in weight, but it's very irregular. And then in the sky, it makes this edge of the sky, this line right here, is much more interesting. Now, one of the ways to really bring the viewer into a painting, which this photograph doesn't have, is I'm going to, right here on the thirds point, I'm going to put a tree. And this tree is, I'm starting up here in the sky area, and I'm just basically telling the viewer and myself that there's a tree there. And see, I brought it way down below the horizon line. If I stop that tree on the horizon line, it would look like a 500-foot tree clear back on the horizon. So I brought the base of the tree down further into the composition. And now that I'm looking at it, it probably needs another tree or two. Just a lot of these trees don't just stand alone. And now your trees, now see, I'll stick another tree right there. When you're doing your trees, you want every tree to be a little different than the other trees. You also want shapes between the trees to be different. And let's see, so I've got three trees here. I've got this one, and then I've got this one that's kind of hugging the side here, and then I've left a space for a shorter tree over here. The subject matter here is right in this area is the trees. The composition is made of the spaces between the trees. So you don't want to have a row of trees the same height, the same spaces. You end up with the trees that look like were planted by a farmer. You know, I can see, you know, probably some sagebrush and stuff out across this valley. So I'm just going to sketch a little bit of stuff in. Some of this is going to run right off the bottom of the canvas. I'm just kind of intuitively working here, and then as I go back, you know, these little shapes get smaller. This is in the Sawtooth area, so this will be probably sagebrush back in here. So then I'm going back, and now I'm back to the foothills. So this is my drawing. That's all the further I will take my drawing. The first thing I want to do, the first thing I want to look for is my darkest value. The darkest values tend to be things that are standing upright in the foreground. So now I'm taking some cool blue and cool yellow and a little bit of mud. I put a little liquid in because I want the paint to flow just a little bit. The way you use liquid during your painting is if you want the paint to flow a little better, you put some liquid in. You have to. It's just something you go by feel. It's something you have to learn on your own, what the consistency is of what you prefer with the paint. I'm going to put a little bit of color on this. You know, I don't know if you'll be able to see the color difference or not, but I'm putting this green, and you notice you can see a lot of canvas weave through the paint. I put my drawing on. I masked a lot of things in, blocked them in a little bit, but it's very thin, transparent paint. When I'm blocking in now, I want to block in my colors with a little thicker paint. I don't want to get super thick paint. It'll make a mess later when I'm trying to paint around it. But I do want to be able to not see through the pigment. Now, I'm leaving some little points of light through there that'll go all the way through to the background. But I can't tell what value the color is if it's transparent, if I can see through it. So I want this paint to go on pretty thick. So there's my foreground trees. Now I may cross this valley. I may, here in the background, have a few more that are kind of sticking up here. Okay, so now things tend to get lighter and bluer as they go back in space. They get lighter because the air is thick, and you're looking through the air, and the air is dissipating things, so it gets lighter. The air bounces around a lot of blue light. It's reflecting a lot of blue molecules. So what I'm doing now is I'm adding a little bit of blue and white to this green of the trees. Now this mountain back here, I've just experimented a little bit. I need a little more white. I test the color a little bit before I commit to it. And I start painting right in between these trees. I don't want to start painting out here and then get up to here and find out I have the wrong value and then have to paint it again. I start right up here next to these trees so that the first brush strokes tell me what the value is that I'm working with. I don't want it to be a lot lighter. It's a step or two lighter. If I get it too light, then I haven't got enough room to make my sky any lighter. So I want a good dark here, and I want a nice, right in this area, I want just kind of a nice mid-tone. I don't want it to be too awfully light in value. You want to block in fairly quickly. Don't worry too much about your edges, so that's all going to get fixed later. Now I'm going back to the next range of trees, so now I want to add even more blue. And let's test it in here. There's some timber in the lower parts of these trees, but mostly these mountains are going to be rock. But down here, this blue should be able to view this blue as distant trees going up that mountain. Okay, now when I get up to that mountain, now down here, I'm adding more white to this blue, but now I'm adding a little bit of red to it. Now I'm adding red to it because we're doing rock now. I want towards green and blue for my living foliage. Let's see, I've got to go a little lighter there, a little redder, and a little lighter. See, I tested it right there next to that light blue. When I switch to adding red to this, then see the viewer can see that it's a different substance. I'm using a different color I'm adding red to make this a rock surface, those mountains. I found if you keep it in the back of your mind that with red you're kind of communicating earth, with yellow you're communicating light, and with blue you're communicating air. And those are the three influences on the colors of things. Okay, now what I've got to do, I've added that red. Now I'm going back one more layer of mountain. So I've added some white to this. And so just as these trees get bluer as they go back, this mountain here gets lighter and bluer as it goes back. If you go out and really get out in nature, go look at a distant range of mountains where you can see several ranges going off in the distance. Each range of mountains is lighter and bluer than the one in front of it. And this block in, see, I'm not stopping to paint any mountains. I'm just blocking in shapes. And as I'm blocking in shapes, see, I'm covering up my lines. Those lines can really get to be a problem when you're trying to paint, and they just keep making your colors dirty. So you want to get rid of those lines as soon as you can. There's my vertical values going back into space. It's easy to see that these trees are in the front, and then it goes back to here, then it goes back to here, to this mountain, and to that mountain. Now I'm going to go to a different kind of foliage. Now I'm going to go to more of a sagebrush color. And sagebrush has a really kind of a nice, beautiful, cool green to it. But the undertone of sagebrush tends to be purple. There's a reason it's called purple, the purple sage. Now I've got some purple on here in the foreground. And I just put a little bit of white and some mud in it. I thought it looked too purple. You want to be careful not to use too much mud, but to use them when you see the mud when you need it, use it. Don't overdo it. A lot of beginning painters end up using neutralizer colors too much. So there, I've got this foreground stuff, and now I'm going to add a little white. See, I want this stuff to get lighter and bluer as it goes back as well. Okay, so now There, I've got, and I'm very sloppy, got this stuff blocked in very sloppy. Okay, now so this is these are all of my vertical values. I blocked my darkest stuff in the foreground, and it gets lighter as I go back. So it gets lighter and bluer, lighter and bluer, lighter and bluer, you know, a little purple up in there. My third value family now is the ground. And what I'm going to do here, I'm taking some white, and I'm using a little bit of cool red and a little bit of cool yellow. And what I'm doing here, now I want to put the horizontal parts of my land. So now I'm using horizontal brush strokes, and I'm in a very sloppy way, I'm just breaking through all this stuff that I put on. I'm breaking through with horizontal strokes. I'm not worried about how they're looking, because I'll be able to fix these later when I come back and I'm finishing this area. So now, and then down into here in the foreground, just any little piece of random, you know, canvas, bare canvas that I come across, I'm putting some horizontal brush strokes in it. I'll resolve all this later. At this stage, you don't want to stop to do any detail. You want to get all this blocked in, especially if you're outdoors. You want to get this block in done before the light changes too much. Okay, so now I've got my three value families in. I've got my foreground verticals, my background verticals, my horizontals, and now I'm doing the sky. The sky generally is the lightest value in your painting because it's the source of the light. The sky now, I'm just going to do a quick, simple, kind of a simple, basic anatomy sky. What I'm doing here, I'm using Viridian, which is my warm blue. So I'm just using my warm blue and white. It has a very green, very cool green cast to it, but I'm using it for my warm blue. And I'm starting at the bottom of the sky. As I've said before, you want to mush color into color. You want to be kind of sloppy until you get to the sky. If I touch the mountains with my brush, I'll get my brush dirty, I'll get my sky dirty. And I want to avoid that. When I come back painting my mountains, I will paint them up into the sky. And if I drag some sky color into the mountain, it just looks like a highlight on the mountain. The mountain color in the sky looks like a dirty sky. Now, one of the things I don't want to do, I don't want to follow the mountains with my color. If I bring my color up this far, then over here, over horizontal, so it looks as though that level of sky is passing behind the mountain. Now, as the sky goes up, now I'm going to come over and I'm going to add a little bit of cool blue into the mix. So then I can, as I go up the sky, I'm adding cool blue into it. I don't want to blend things too much. I want to be kind of nice and sloppy with this. I don't necessarily want it smooth blended, but what I do want is a lot of variation. I want gradual transitions, but not smooth blends. What I'm going to do now, I'm getting my sky pretty well blocked in. What I want to do now, okay, my light source is going to be coming from over here on the left. So what I'm going to do, going to take some more white and some more warm blue. See, I've got my sky basically blocked in. Now, if you're painting in the studio, this is a good time to go do something for a while. Break your concentration a little bit so you can come back fresh. But if you're really into it, just stay with it. The second stage is to start finishing. I have blocked in from the front to the back, step by step by step, all the way back to the sky. Now, what I want to do is start with the back and come forward. I finish things as I come back to the front. Now, I want this area up here on the upper left, I want this to be a little lighter and warmer, I should say, than the area on the right. My sky is going to be a little darker over here because the sun is over there. It's going to be a little darker and a little cooler on the right. So now, I can come back in now with a little more cool blue and white. And I want to have texture in my sky. I don't want to have it smoothly blended. I don't know if you can see it in the monitor, but there's quite a bit of texture to that sky. So I think I'll just leave it there for now. The next thing I'm going to do now is I'll start with this mountain that is furthest back. First thing I want to do is paint this mountain right up into the sky. Get rid of that halo that I had around the mountain. Get rid of that dry canvas that's separating the mountain from the sky. That mountain is blocked in. Now, if my light is coming from the left and I'm going to paint, I now want to put some architecture on the downhill, the side of the slope of the mountain that's away from the light. Now this is going to be very counterintuitive. What I have to do, let's see, a little more white. My block-in color is my darkest color in the mountain. Now I'm putting, light comes over, it hits stuff over here, and then it bounces back. On the shadow side, this light bounces back onto the mountain. So one of the first mistakes an amateur painter makes is to make the shadow side of the mountain darker. It has to be just a tiny bit lighter. You're putting reflected light on the mountain, not shadow. All the shadow is in your original block-in value. Okay, now we'll start explaining how the warm and cool works. Now I want to put light on this mountain, so I'm going to take some white, and I'm coming over here onto the warm side, and I'm putting a little bit of red in it. I'm putting a tiny, tiny bit of yellow. I want light to hit that mountain. The red I want to kind of communicate as being the mountain. The yellow is a little bit of the light on the mountain. So now I'm coming over. Let's see, I think it needs to be a little redder. Okay, so I want light to hit these mountains from the left. So what I'm going to do here is now I've taken this is warm color, and I don't know if you can see it. It needs to be a little lighter, I think. But these slopes that are going downhill to the left, that the light is hitting. Can you see the warmth that's hitting that mountain? The light is hitting it. That's the difference. See, I paint the mountain with my cool colors, and then I kick it. I want sunlight to hit that mountain. I hit it with warm colors. The rule of thumb, if you're out painting and you want to know whether to put something warm or cool, if the light is hitting it, it's warm. If it's in shadow, it's cool. So now I'm going to come a step forward again, and now I'm going to play with this mountain. I've got this mountain is just a little in front of that one. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my block-in color, make sure that I have all of my edges the way I want them. So this might be a little easier to see this time because this mountain is a little darker. So now, again, light is coming from the left, so it's hitting things over here and bouncing back to the mountain. So what I want to do here is, see, I'm putting reflected light on this down on the side of the mountain that's facing away from the light. Then, now I'm going to go back to the left side, a little more red in that. And now I'm putting the sunlight hitting this mountain, and then I'll hit this. And see, I don't want to make super detailed mountains. I want the viewer to create most of the mountain. I just want to provide the viewer with just enough information to do that and to think, so the viewer is convinced that I've painted it when in fact it's their imagination that is interpreting my color notes. I just want to provide the color notes. Now I've got to go back in. A lot of times I go back and forth a little bit when I'm finishing these, so I have enough texture on the. I refine the shadow side, and I refine the highlight side a little bit. Now, one of the things I can do here to really create, see how hazy that mountain looks? See, it's almost like a Hudson River effect. It goes way back into space, and you can see the light hitting it. You can see it, you interpret it. It goes way, way back there. Now, I'm going to just throw a couple of little highlights of snow. When you're doing snow, especially when you're starting, the first thing you want to do with snow is very little. Now I'm going to take, this is just some cool blue and white, and I'm putting this cool blue and white where they're on the purple side. This is the downhill, the unlit slope of the mountain. Putting a little bit of, and I think I'll put a little bit right here where these two mountains kind of come together. Is now I'm coming over here again. I'm in my warm white. The snow's going to have a little more yellow, so I don't really want a lot of red in it, like I do the mountains. It's mostly a lot of white with a little tiny bit of red. So see, you can see snow kind of hitting down into some of these little areas. I could almost put a glacier down in here if I wanted. But it's with the snow, it's best just to leave it at a couple of places. Now what I want to do, I've got the timber kind of on these foothills here on that back mountain. So I'm just going to touch that up just a little bit before I come down. Now I want to come back down to this. The Sawtooth have these really broad foothill areas in front of them. They're very distinctive. And so what I'm wanting to do mainly is just get a little bit of the illusion of some tree. I'm pushing some of this color up so I get treetops. Now this foothill, the foothills back there, one of the things that is happening with those is they're coming forward. They're coming towards the viewer. So if I darken the bottom areas of this hill a little bit, it will start to come towards the viewer. The viewer won't register what's going. They'll feel it. They don't understand why that mountain is coming towards you. You want to give the viewer a lot of unconscious cues so that they will interpret what's going on. So there's the band of foothills across. The mountain is quite a ways back. I hope it comes through on the monitor because I really like how that mountain is really back in the haze. Okay, so now I can come forward and I'm going to start putting some of this ground in. Now I'm not going to be painting sagebrush and trees and all that stuff. What I'm going to be doing is providing the viewer with enough information to create a lot of those trees and sagebrush and stuff. One of the ways I'm doing that is with the direction of my brush strokes. If I want to communicate land, I use horizontal brush strokes. Okay, so then I can go back into that. Now I'm going back into these purples, and I'll probably just go back and forth 2 or 3 times. The sagebrush things are standing upright, so I'm using a little bitty vertical brush strokes for these, and I'm letting these get. My brush strokes are getting lighter, are getting darker and larger as they come forward. If you can count the number of bushes in your painting, you're not communicating well. You've got to have enough ambiguity that you don't trap the viewer in looking at little individual things. This all has to look like it's individual little things, but it's really not. Now see, looks like I've got all this stuff here. I need a few more of these little horizontal brush strokes, a few little places down in here. One of the things I need to do, I'm taking that tree color, my foreground trees, I'm taking that color and I put a little more blue and white in it. Let's see, it's got to be a little darker than that. What I want to do is just have a few little clusters of trees coming across that prairie. So it isn't just a big bare prairie with one little stand of trees here in the foreground. I want to have some little stands of trees out there across to the mountains. And they don't have to be done with any amount of detail. They just have to be standing upright, just enough information for the viewer to think it's a tree. Okay, let's see, it looks like it needs a little more right in here. Okay, so now I'm going to come down. Coming one step back to the foreground now. See, I started in the back and I've worked my way back to the front. I started laying my picture out front to back. Now, psychologically, if you start with the darks, it's much easier to see your value steps going back. If you start with your sky and start to work forward, it's much more difficult to see your value relationships, and also these really dark colors, that blue, the ultramarine, the alizarin, these are very thin and oily. If you try to paint that dark over that stuff, you just end up making mud. So you want to put your trees, these dark foreground things in first. So now I'm going to come up, let's see, I've got to I'm using just little tiny brush strokes. When was painting the sky, I couldn't touch the tree or I would get my sky dirty. But I can fuss that little tree out into the sky, and it just looks like I've put a little highlight on the tree. If some sky color goes into the tree, it's just a highlight. And again, I'm getting another layer of green over that. I started with just my mud in the drawing, and I have to keep covering that. And now, if you want, I want that little this little top notch on the tree, so it's like I sharpen my brush. I turn it back over, back over, back over. Then when I hit it here, I can get a really, really thin little line up at the top. And then I can start coming down. Remember, pine trees are not symmetrical. They're balanced. If something goes off kilter on one side, then down here it'll go back the other way and balance. But they're not symmetrical. Give them a lot of gnarliness. Look through some painting magazines. See how other artists deal with trees. Every artist seems to have a different style. And see, when I'm getting these trees in, they kind of softly sit next to each other very well. But see, the trees are the subject. The space between the trees is the conversation and the composition of the trees. That's the areas where it becomes interesting, is in the composition. If you can get used to seeing the negative space, which on the mountains, the negative space is that bottom design of the sky. That's what gives the mountains its magic. Not the shape of the mountains, but what it does to that bottom edge of the sky. I want to take the light's coming from the left. So what I'm going to do with these trees, now I'm taking some warm blue, warm red, or warm blue, warm yellow, and a little bit of warm red. Now, green is a real important color for landscape painting. It's also the most difficult color you'll use. Don't ever use greens right out of the tube. And one of the little secrets of using greens is always put a little bit of red. If it's a cool green, put a little bit of alizarin in it. If it's a warm green, put a little bit of warm red. And that helps to take it kind of towards kind of an olive direction, which makes it look much more natural. Now see, all I'm doing now, I repainted that tree, but now I'm putting a little bit of a light source on that tree. I'm not trying to paint every little branch and pine needle and everything with this tree. I'm trying to just get just enough basic information down that the viewer will complete the process. So there, I've got looks like I'll need to put it. I'm going to put just a little more light up in here. Okay, and then now I'm going to take some. I'm just going to take some warm mud and a little bit of red, a little bit of warm blue, and what I want to do now is I'm just going to very, very light touch. Looks like it needs just a little more red in that. Put a few tree trunks in here. Okay, so now, see how I finished my sky first, the mountains second, the foothills third, built the horizontal plane back to where these trees are. Now I've got to play with this stuff here just a little bit more, where my sagebrush stuff is. And I think I may be ready for some kind of the tops of the sagebrush. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm taking some white, some cool yellow and cool blue, a little bit of mud to neutralize that just a little bit, and then let's see, a little more blue. And then see, I just test the color as I'm playing with it. If you can kind of see that kind of teal looking blue, I'm trying to put the tops on this sagebrush now. Well, I'm hoping this turns out on the monitor because it's looking pretty good here. Let's see, I think I need to put, I've got some of this kind of the ground color. I think what I need to do now is put just a little bit of that in a few areas down in here. So, see, I haven't tried to really differentiate the bushes much. I just want to get a lot of random brushwork so it looks as though it's going to be bushes. Now, let's see here. I need to organize this area in here just a little more. And now I'm going to come back in with my purple and just a little more. Let's see, I need just a little bit here in the front. See, if I darken that here in the front, then this tends to look like it's coming forward much better. Okay, and then I think I'm getting awfully close to being done. I'm really kind of liking what's going on here. There's a few little refinements it needs. This edge right here is a little too sharp. I'm going to just break up that edge back there between the valley floor and those foothill trees. And then I think one of the things I would like to do, I'm going to take, this is a point at which sometimes I really screw my painting up because I get some ideas at the end. What I'm going to do now is, I've got those little tree things going across the valley. I'm going to just put a few brush strokes in here and try to get this to almost be a little bit of a river that's going to come through here. Maybe I can, create a little more interest in these trees right in here. And the thing about the river, what you don't want to do is have it one line of, you want to have it all broken up really good. And then I also want to have it, if I'm doing this little river, I want this to be brighter here, so there's greater contrast right in here. So that draws the viewer over more to this tree. So I think that's about done. Now, one of the things I haven't really gone into yet, my brushes. I use filberts. I use almost exclusively filberts. Filberts are a flat brush, see, I like this, and the hairs are longer and they're rounded over at the top, so they don't leave all these little cutting lines in your painting. I can use the brush flat to cover ground. I can really sharpen this. If I want to make a tight line, I can turn that brush back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, till I get, it's almost like I'm sharpening a knife, and I can get a nice thin line with it. For starting out, I recommend that you paint small, and paint a lot from photographs in your studio before you go out and start, and practice this system. A book I would recommend is Carlson's Guide to Landscape Painting. It's kind of the Bible of landscape painting. Everything you need to know is in that book. It's a very inexpensive book. You can get it on Amazon. It's probably like $10 or less, even if especially buy a used book. It's not a pretty coffee table book. It's a textbook on painting, and just about everything I use or just about everything I teach is in that book. Some of the information is a little archaic. It was written a long time ago. The book can be real boring. It's a textbook, but I highly, highly recommend that. But it will, and then when you paint from a photograph, you generally can't believe the value relationships in a photograph. If you copy a photograph, it'll look like you copied a photograph. It won't look like you went outdoors. The system you have to use to interpret a photograph is dark verticals, foreground. Your darkest values are vertical in the foreground. Your second value is the midground, the things that are standing up in the midground. Third value is the things standing up in the background. Fourth value is the sun hitting the horizontal lines, and the lightest value generally is the sky. The things that violate that rule are water and snow, because they're so reflective. Like that water right there is, You know, I don't know if that water is lighter than the sky or if it's just because of the amount of contrast. That snow right there is lighter than the sky, but it's very, very highly reflective. But this is basically how to get started. Follow these value rules and interpret your photographs. Don't copy the photograph.
That's good.
Am I done, boss?
Yeah, you're done.